I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your hosts, Tim Harrison and Jamie Jackson.
Hey Lurkers, it's Jamie.
And Tim.
Tim's a little bit, what's the word?
Freaked out? I mean, what else do you want to say? You just sat the thing here, asked it questions, and it answered.
I did a little bit of a EVP session sitting here in the studio, and so he's a little freaked out.
Yeah, what's even freakier is the fact that she asked it. So to prove a point here, she asked the question, was it male or was it female, right? So she asked, are you male? Wait a few seconds. And she asked, are you female? So on the male part, you heard nothing. On the female part, it sounded like it screamed yes. And then I go, oh, hey, Jamie, ask it, why is it here? And she goes, no, I can tell you why it's here. I said, oh, why, Jamie? She said, because you're here weird hours and you pay attention to it. And I go, oh, if I ignore it, will it go away? She was like, no. It was going to stay, Tim. So basically, I'm the big old F word right now because I acknowledged when weird things happen.
You noticed.
I can't bring my kids here anymore.
Why? Has it done anything?
No.
Hasn't done anything.
You make me sound like such a pansy.
Well.
If the shoe fits.
You said it.
But
all
good.
All it does is make some noise and try to get some attention.
Some attention it needs. Jamie said, all he needs is attention, Tim. This is all he needs. You know what Tim needs? 1 million views.
His blankie.
I do. No, you got this nice, beautiful blankie right here.
1 million views? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, 1 million views on our listens on our podcast.
Yeah, well, got a long way to go.
Uh-oh.
It's my posse.
It's your posse?
Mm-hmm. They're dying to know about what happened last night.
Oh, the place we didn't go?
Mm-mm. They know we didn't go. No.
Oh, at your house?
The ghost at the house.
Not today.
Because I was talking to them through Messenger because I was a little scared.
You guys got a group chat going on Messenger?
All the time. We talk constantly. Constantly.
I like how Tim's not involved in any of this group chat. This is boo spit. Okay?
I can make a group and include you.
And half the time, I'm pretty sure they're talking about how much of a pansy I am.
No, that's just one time. Kelly just one time said, Tim's hilarious. He's so scared. I'd look for it, but there's so many messages that take forever to find.
But I am a pansy. I'll put that out there.
Let me tell you. So, stuff happened in the house last night, which won't be on the last episode that we recorded because we're cutting that out. So anyway.
Why?
Well, because we restarted it. Anyway, so last night in my editing room, office, whatever you want to call it, I'm sitting at my desk, and you'll hear later on. Actually, I think the episode after this one is where you'll hear about my house. My house is haunted.
And they were 200 years old?
I know, it'd be 2 episodes after this one. It's like 140 at least, maybe older. So I felt like somebody was watching me, and then the back of my shoulders and upper back got super ice cold, and I felt like somebody was leaning over me, like looking to see what I was doing. And I finished editing. I was almost done, and I finished it, got up, wouldn't turn around, got up, turned the light out, walked out, closed the door. And so I got up a couple times during the night to go to the bathroom, and I made the dog get up out of bed and go with me. So...
Oh, no.
I, too, am a pansy. Also, I've been by myself this weekend. So that was why the dog had to go.
She
why I was
had
freaked out.
Open invitation to come to the Harrison household, but I didn't send her the address.
He didn't send me the address, so, that's kind of hard. I could have found it, probably, but that would have taken...
You actually probably could, because what people don't know is you're actually a really good detective.
Sometimes. So, anyway, I'm by myself this weekend, and I couldn't even type up the notes for this episode during the night. Like, I could not do that. Had to be during the daylight. Like, I had a time frame of when these had to be completed, so I didn't get scared at night.
Just note, y'all, Jamie works super hard on getting all these notes and stuff done, so for something to scare her, to not let her do this, must have been pretty serious.
He's just... today's episode is about Ed Gein.
Ugh.
So...
Alright, I'll put this out there. I don't care who it is. That guy is garbage. Garbanzo beans.
Well...
He's a garbanzo bean.
I got a lot of opinions. I got a lot of opinions with this one.
Okay, and I want to put some out here, too. People said he's attractive. First off, that dude had a weird face.
He was not considered attractive. I don't think he's hideous. He's not hideous, but I don't...
Okay, so what they were picturing, the stuff that he did, they were thinking like he's like some crazy guy, like half shaved head, rocking down in the basement by himself, and he's not.
He's normal. We'll talk about it. But Ed Gein, this scares me because he was a real person who really did these things. He was a human who was alive and he did them. Ghosts don't scare me because, that's not true because I just said I was scared.
Yeah.
It's the unknown that scares me, but it's not like they're going to kill me in my sleep scare me. It's, I don't want to come across them without being prepared. So like at a 3 a.m. trip to the bathroom, I don't want to like walk in the hallway and see a shadow figure because I wouldn't need to go to the bathroom anymore.
It'd be down your leg. I will say this though, your perspective of things has really rubbed off on me. I'm going to put that out there. In the last like 2 weeks, I'll be up front. I'm like, ghosts, they're ghosts. But looking up the people we've been looking up, I was like, they are true monsters.
There are monsters.
And these aren't the monsters that hide under your bed. These are the monsters that come and take you out of the bed.
And they're living,
breathing
in your neighborhoods.
And you can actually, there's people that actually have encountered these people, that know these people. It's just,
yeah.
It's freaky.
And Ed Gein, we're going to put a disclaimer in right now before I forget.
Yeah.
I am going to be marking this episode explicit.
Yeah.
I would not recommend young children. I think this is probably like R-rated. I would not allow younger children to listen to this episode. So he's a serial killer. If you don't know who he is, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Psycho. These are all major movies that used Ed Gein and what he did as a template for their movies. And
again, these are movies. This guy's real life.
Yeah.
Like this
is true. So so these movies took him and made horror films out of them. So this is a horror film episode, and I do not recommend that young children listen to this. So if you do not like hearing about serial killers and the things that they've done, this is not the episode for you. So I just want to start off with that.
So I know you put the disclaimer out there about Ed.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that really just I can't wrap my head around this guy is the why. Like why? Why go that far?
I think I can sort of answer that.
You think you can sort of answer it?
I think in what I've got here, it probably still won't make sense to normal people, but I think there is an explanation in here. Okay. Enough to explain why somebody may do that.
All right, well, enough of me kind of beating around the bush. Let's go ahead and cut it loose to you.
Okay. So we're going to talk about Edward Theodore Gein, who was born August 27th in 1906 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Land of cheese.
The honey badgers, eh?
Yes. What is that, Green Bay Packers?
That's the Packers cutting the cheese. They are one of the, I think they are the only franchise not owned by a single entity, but by a group. Like, they're actually owned by the community, I believe. Pointless information that I know.
That's okay. Ed was born the youngest of two boys. His parents were George and Augusta Gein. His older brother's name was Henry.
He had an older brother?
He had an older brother. Yep.
Poor Henry.
Oh, yes, poor Henry. Ed was born with a growth on his left eyelid, and that caused him to have like a lazy eye. Caused a problem with his eye. I feel bad for Ed. I'm just going to say that starting off. Well, you're about to find out. But I want to put that out there, that sometimes people, these people commit these crimes and you kind of label them as a monster, and it's like, how did they get that way? Sometimes it's nature, where they were born wired that way. Sometimes it's nurture, and in this case, I think it's a lot of it has to do with how he was raised.
So, all right, just want to clarify something.
Mm-hmm.
You feel bad for the child version of Ed, not the adult version.
I don't condone anything he did. He was disgusting, and what he did was horrendous and cruel, and every awful thing. I mean, it's just awful what he did. But I can empathize with him because I can see how he ended up that way. And it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, he was more or less made almost.
Yeah, I think this is a case of, I think he was wired a little different.
Nature versus nurture.
But the nurturing, he didn't really get much nurturing, and that his childhood helped create what he became. So anyway, let's get into it. His mom, Augusta, absolutely hated his father. Hated him. His dad was an alcoholic, couldn't keep a job. He worked as a carpenter, a tanner, which is somebody who processes skins. This is important. And an insurance salesman before he ended up not working anymore. Augusta basically thought her husband was worthless. She didn't allow him to have much of a say in raising the boys at all. And she couldn't leave him because she was extremely religious. So...
What religion does that? Like where you can't divorce?
Most of them. I mean, it wasn't that she couldn't. It was that she was so strongly religious that she married him. She stuck with him. You know, like her belief system, she absolutely couldn't. She was based in the Lutheran religion.
Okay.
Her family was, I don't know that that's what she was specifically, but that's what her background was.
And nothing against anybody that is that religion. It's just, this is part of the story.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just giving the details.
Yeah.
What happened has nothing to do with any specific religion, but she was fanatical. She was fanatically religious. Is that the right word? I don't know. It is now because I just made it up.
We could put that in the Jamie dictionary.
Sure. It's called poetic license. So I think she worked at a grocery store. I think she owned it. She supported the family that way with this small little kind of like a corner store sort of thing. And while they had the store, Ed was a young boy and he ended up witnessing his parents slaughtering a hog in the shed behind the store. And apparently he had a sexual reaction.
So you got aroused by it.
Yeah. So some research puts him around the age of 7. Some puts him around the age of 10. I don't know, somewhere young. His mom finally made the decision to sell the store and moved the family to a 155-acre farm in Plainfield, Wisconsin. And she wanted to move the boys away from what she considered the immorality of the city and the sinners that lived there. She wanted to isolate her sons. And I've seen some information say it was 195 acre. I don't know. I don't think when you're talking about that much acreage, 40 acres matters either way. So
that's very true.
It was a lot of acreage.
Yeah.
So the farm became the family's permanent residence, and their closest neighbors were about a mile away. And Augusta used the isolation of the farm's location to turn away visitors and kept her sons away from any outside influence. She was very religious, as I said, and she preached about the immorality of the world and the evils of drinking all the time. She had a belief that all women, except for herself, of course, were promiscuous and instruments of the devil, and she told this to the boys over and over and over again.
Yeah, just to put this out there, everybody's evil but her.
Yeah.
Just her.
Well, she's pretty evil. Sorry.
Sounds like it's the...
Neither one of his parents were real winners.
Yeah.
So they should look in a mirror before they start pointing fingers at who the evil people are.
100%. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, she read from the Bible to the boys every afternoon, and she would usually choose selections from the Old Testament and Revelations, which dealt heavily with death, murder, and divine retribution. So, Old Testament's very eye for an eye type of...
Yeah, it's...
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a child, Ed was said to be shy, and he had strange mannerisms. Some people said he was known to start randomly laughing, like he was laughing at his own private joke in his head, and he would just start laughing. The boys, Ed and Henry, only left the farm to go to school. It was a one-room schoolhouse with about 12 students. Ed was isolated at school because of his shyness and his lazy eye, and he also apparently had a lesion on his tongue that made him talk weird. It didn't describe how he talked, but he... if you bite your tongue, I don't think it was a lisp. When you bite your tongue and there's a sore on your tongue, it hurts when it rubs against the side of your mouth. I swear to God, you're a child.
Do you want to hear a funny story real fast?
Okay.
Many people out here can relate to this story, Jamie. I love me a burger, okay? I love me a burger. I love me a burger with cheese. I love me a burger with bacon. And I love me a burger with eggs, okay? You put all that on a sandwich, you got the Royal Red Robin burger, okay?
You had me till eggs.
Don't be hating, just appreciate it.
Yeah.
I got so eager to eat one time that I actually bit a hole in my cheek and it got infected. I didn't even know it because I was so hungry to smash this burger.
God. And it hurt, didn't it?
Yeah, it hurt a lot.
It hurt to talk, didn't it?
Still didn't stop me from talking, Jamie.
I can't imagine that it would have. Oh, God. So anyway, he had this lesion on his tongue, so he spoke with some weirdness. He and his brother were punished severely anytime they tried to make any friends. So they weren't allowed to have friends. No visitors came to the house. They could go to school, but they went to school, came home, that was it. And at school, kids are mean. They've been mean forever.
Hey, kids are ruthless. They tell you the honest truth, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, he's got a lazy eye. He's already got weird mannerisms. And he's got some sort of speech impairment. So, it's the trifecta.
I mean, for crying out loud, my son, I come in from working out and I smell bad. First thing, pee, you, daddy, you stink. I'm like, golly, boy.
Yeah, yep. So, Augusta, the mom, verbally abused both the boys because she believed they were destined to become failures like their father. Some days, Ed would come home from school crying because the kids made fun of him. And when that happened, his father would beat him in the head until his ears started to ring. So neither parent is a winner here.
Yeah, I'm going to put it out. That dad can catch these hands if he wants them without a problem.
Yeah. His father was known to become violent when he was drinking, and he often would beat both of the boys during that time frame.
Absolute loser.
So is the mother. I mean, verbal abuse. Sometimes verbal abuse, in my opinion, can be worse than the physical abuse.
Yeah, at least physical, you know it's coming. Verbal, it hits you later, too.
Not only that, but as far as proof, you can see a bruise. You can't see the wounds that come from verbal abuse.
That's, that cuts deep, Jamie.
Yep.
You know what? That's so true. Damn,
Yep. And she had more of a grip on them than the dad. Like, she didn't allow the dad to have too much control of how they were raised. So she's the one controlling them all the time.
Yeah, just enough to beat the crap out of them, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
Even despite this, Ed did average in school. And he excelled in reading, though. He was an excellent reader. He graduated the 8th grade, but then he dropped out. But he still continued to read a lot.
Now, that's common back then, am I correct? Like, because they left school early to go to work.
Yeah, it wasn't super uncommon for them to, not continue past 8th grade. To me is middle school. So to continue into high school. So that wasn't really uncommon.
Okay.
There were some people who claimed that he was a little slower than other kids, but I actually found that he had an IQ of 106. So I looked it up, and 90 to 109 is considered average. And in case you're wondering, I'm very superior.
What is your IQ?
139.
How do you take an IQ test?
I had it taken in school.
I want to take one. If he comes back like 75, I have a lot to know then. Like, I knew it!
Forrest Gump had, what was his, 70?
I love Forrest.
I do too.
Run, Forrest,
He
run!
may have only had 70 IQ, but he was wise beyond.
Hey, that man, don't kick him the ball.
There's more than just an IQ, in my opinion. IQ doesn't measure everything.
Yeah, because I pick things up and put it down with the best of them.
Yeah, you're such a So, April 1940, Ed's father, George Gein, died. Ed was 34 at this point, and his brother was 39. And they started doing more odd jobs around town to help with the expenses of the farm.
I would say sorry for the loss, but F off,
Not
Daddy.
really.
No one likes you.
Well, while they were working these odd jobs, both were considered reliable and honest by the people in the community. Both worked as handyman, or would that be handyman? Anyway, they both worked handyman jobs. Ed also babysat for neighbors. He was a babysitter.
Hey, he's a jack of all trades.
He is. And he actually enjoyed babysitting because people said he seemed to relate more to kids than to adults.
I mean, honestly, at that point in time, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. At the age of 36, Ed was still eligible for the draft because this was my question. It took me a while to find this. I'm thinking, how was he not being drafted? There's a war.
That is true. I
know.
Wow.
How did he end up not being taken somewhere else because there's a war? So he was still eligible for the draft at 36. He had to go to Milwaukee for a physical. He ended up being rejected because of the growth on his eye. It actually impaired his vision a little bit. So they rejected him. So that's why he didn't serve.
Okay.
And I believe Henry was too old. He was a couple years older. It didn't say that Henry was eligible anymore for the draft. So I don't really know how it worked back then.
Off topic here. In the draft now, like if you're 25 in 6 months, you don't have to enter in the draft anymore?
I have no idea.
Oh, sorry.
Because I'm old, so it doesn't apply to me.
Jamie, you're not old.
I'm old enough to not have to apply for the draft. That was my point.
That's fair.
So about this time, Henry begins dating a divorced mother of 2, and he starts planning on leaving the farm and moving in with her.
Okay, so he's growing up.
He's
about time.
He's an adult. I mean, he's almost 40 years old, and he's met a woman, and he's planning on moving out.
Pretty woman.
So he starts voicing concerns about Ed's attachment to their mother, and he often talked bad about their mother around Ed, and Ed would respond by being shocked and hurt about it.
What?
So Henry's like, that's a little weird, because Ed was very attached to his mom. Yeah, it's a little weird.
I mean, because she definitely wasn't attached to them.
Well, she was attached to Ed, I think. I don't know how much, but...
Oh, you're about to get into something, aren't you?
She controlled them quite a bit. Tried to control. I mean, she couldn't control Henry anymore, because Henry's like, out of here. He's going to have a normal life. God bless him.
Yeah, good for Henry.
Good for him. But he starts voicing concern and dissing their mom. So, May 16th, 1944, Henry and Ed are burning off some marsh vegetation on the farm. So they're doing a controlled burn. Mm-hmm. Except it got out of control. Fire department had to get called in, and they came, put it out. After the firefighters left, Ed reports that his brother is missing. So, using lanterns and flashlights, search party goes looking for Henry. And they found his body face down, and it appeared as if he had been dead for some time. I did find some information that said Ed actually led them straight to the body, even though he claimed he couldn't find his brother.
So there's already speculation Ed killed Henry.
Yeah. His brother appeared to have died from heart failure. He was about 43 at this time. But apparently he was badly bruised on his head. He had some bruises on his head. Police dismissed foul play, and the coroner listed the death as asphyxiation. There was no investigation. There was no autopsy.
Is asphyxiation normal with heart failure?
No.
Okay.
Asphyxiation is, lack of breathing. So I don't think that's... I don't know.
So basically this coroner...
They just guessed.
Yeah.
They didn't do an autopsy.
Gave the old country throw.
It was a guess. The police just couldn't believe that Ed could kill his brother, is the bottom line. They didn't think Ed was capable of killing him.
Okay. At this moment in time.
That's why there was no investigation. It was a little suspicious, but they just said, I think it was probably just an accident, natural causes, and that's it.
A little sus.
Yeah. I don't think that's the case. So not long after Henry's death, their mom, Augusta, had a paralyzing stroke. So Ed, of course, is taking care of his mom. She eventually has a second stroke and died in 1945, so a year after Henry's death.
So Ed's all alone.
Ed's now alone.
I really want to say something about Augusta, but...
Yeah, she's a piece of crap.
Yep.
So when his mom died, Ed said that he lost his only friend and his one true love, and that he was absolutely alone in the world.
That's sad, weird, and creepy all in the same
It's
sentence.
disgusting.
Yeah.
It's sad. I feel bad for him. But it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Because it really makes you wonder.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
I found nothing about that. I found nothing about anything sexual with his mom. Like, she made the boys promise that they would stay virgins throughout their life. So I don't know that anything... There were sexual issues. I think one time she caught him in the bathtub pleasuring himself and apparently grabbed him by the junk and squeezed and, scolded him. She was against that. So things she did were sexual, but I don't think there was actual, a sexual relationship with his mom because she wanted them to stay virgins.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's what I said. Children should not be listening to this episode.
No, they should not.
So I don't think I should be listening to this episode.
Okay, about South That made me grab my stuff. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That made me hurt. God.
So Ed did keep the farm, and he continued to do odd jobs, and apparently the soil conservation program offered him a subsidy too. So he was getting money, I think, from like local government or whoever had that soil conservation thing, and he was doing odd jobs. So that's what allowed him to keep the farm.
All right, so he's bringing in some kind of money.
Yeah. He boarded up the rooms that his mom used. So the upstairs, the downstairs parlor, and the living room were all sealed off. And they were kept exactly as his mom left them.
A little weird.
And he lived in a small room off the kitchen. The house later was described as being unlivable, with debris littering the house throughout. I think it was kind of like a borderline hoarder type thing.
Yeah.
But not. It was, I've seen photos. Trash. There's a lot of trash. Didn't clean up.
Yeah, he's a filthy guy.
Yeah. He began reading a lot of pulp magazines. Basically, pulp magazines are cheap fiction magazines.
Okay.
And adventure stories. Most of them included stories about head shrinking, grave robbing, human anatomy, and like cannibals. You know, like pygmies in Africa. You know, the headhunter type people. That's a lot of the stories dealt with that.
Right.
The neighbors began reporting at this time that Ed smelled really bad and that his appearance when he would show up for his jobs was beginning to seriously deteriorate.
Okay.
18 months after his mom's death, his visits to his mother's grave turned into visits to the Plainfield Cemetery and other local cemeteries with a pry bar.
So he's taking stuff.
Ed would later say he was driven by intense loneliness and strange visions. The first grave he dug up was his own mother's. He took her head and took it home where he shrunk it the way he had read about. I actually read a description that said he opened the coffin, grabbed her head in his hands, and twisted it off. Yeah, if I had to read and know all this, you're all going to know this too, because this is why I couldn't type this up at night, because then I would have been at home alone thinking about the serial killer who pulled his mom's head off her corpse.
Oh, man.
So, at this point, he has shrunken his mom's head, like a witch doctor, headhunter guy out in the jungle.
After he ripped
it off her body. He began scouting obituaries, looking for women that were around his mom's age, and then he would go and dig up the newly buried coffin, and he'd take what he wanted and then recover the graves.
Such a creep.
He denied, after he was caught, he denied having sex with the corpses.
What?
He denied that he had sex with them other than masturbation.
Did anybody accuse him of it?
Yeah, when he was arrested, they questioned it. He said he did not have sex with them. He said they smelled too bad, but it actually still falls under necrophilia.
So you just whack it to a terrible smelling piece?
Apparently.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
Jamie.
this is, yeah.
Who picked this guy?
You did. This is a Tim special.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's something special, all right.
Yeah, it sure is. There was an increase in the number of missing persons in the area, including an 8-year-old girl who disappeared without a trace other than tire tracks from a Ford.
Let me guess what kind of car he drove.
I think it was a Ford truck, but I'm not saying that with any kind of conviction.
Okay.
In 1951, Ed began visiting a bar called Mary's Tavern, which was located near the farm, and it was owned by a middle-aged woman named Mary Hogan. She apparently resembled his mom, but she had a really foul mouth and a trashy history, so she was like the opposite of his mom, but she resembled her. He became obsessed with her.
Oh, no.
She also went by the nickname Bloody Mary, and it was because of her personality. It was kind of bawdy. You know, like, think about somebody who might own a tavern in the mid-1940s.
You gotta be a tough
woman.
person, yeah.
You gotta be a tough broad.
To be any kind of woman in the 40s and own something.
Own a bar.
Yeah.
And, you know, rural area, you
I mean,
kind of...
crying out loud, it's hard now for women to own something.
Yeah.
Come on. This is 2021.
Yeah. 1952, 2 men disappeared after spending several hours at a Plainfield bar. I also saw some information that said that they were 2 hunters. In that information, it said they disappeared without a trace, no trace of them, and their vehicle was never found.
So they just up and vanished.
Yeah, and I'm going chronologically here.
Yeah, you're fine.
Just the different things. It was kind of hard to figure out exactly how to present the information, because we all know Ed did stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and if you don't, now you will.
Surprise!
Yeah.
As a serial killer. Surprise!
He honestly, He's a special one.
He's real special.
He's very special.
Yeah, so 1953, there was a 15-year-old girl named Evelyn Hartley who was abducted while babysitting for family friends. When her dad went to look for her, there were signs of a struggle, including her broken glasses, blood, and footprints. Ed is said to have been visiting a relative who lived nearby where she was babysitting, but he denied any involvement, and he did apparently pass 2 lie detectors, and her body was never found. I don't put a whole lot of store in lie detectors back then.
Even now.
Now they can't even be, they're not admissible in court. They can't even be used to, years ago, I think they could be used to arrest somebody, to have just cause, but they can't now. So.
I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts also, and I want to say it was, Crime Garage Crimes or something like that, Crime Garage. And the guy said it perfectly. He said, lie detector tests, if you're innocent, prove nothing.
Right.
If you're guilty, they prove everything.
Exactly.
And it's like, so basically, it's like doesn't matter.
Right, exactly, yeah. In 1954, Mary Hogan, that's the lady who owned the bar, Mary Hogan goes missing from her bar.
And Ed was obsessed with her.
Police suspect foul play because they found blood on the floor next to a spent bullet casing.
Okay.
The next day, the day after Mary goes missing, Ed is working with a man named Elmo Ewick. I'm guessing at the name. They were discussing the disappearance of news, and Ed says to this guy, she's up at the house right now.
What?
But Elmo thought he was completely joking.
Right.
I mean, I think I've done stuff like that too. Oh yeah, he's back in the bar, and I got, he didn't think, he thought he was just BSing.
Because you're shooting the stuff while you're doing something. It's just like,
you're
oh,
working.
whatever.
Oh yeah, she's back in the house right now, Silly guy.
Silly guy.
1957, Ed goes to the local Warden's hardware store and he inquires about the cost of antifreeze from Mrs. Warden, the store owner. And her son was there. Her son was a sheriff's deputy.
Okay.
The next day, Bernice Warden, 58, disappears from her store. Her son, what?
And this is the woman that owned it, correct?
Yeah, Bernice Warden owned Warden's hardware.
Okay.
The day before she goes missing, Ed's there asking about the cost of antifreeze. He came in and said, how much is antifreeze?
Okay.
He leaves. The next day, she's missing. She goes missing. Her son, as I said, his name was Frank Warden. He was a sheriff's deputy. He and the Sheriff Schley, go to the store, find the cash register gone, blood on the floor, and a .22 caliber rifle out of place on its rack. They also find a receipt for antifreeze made out to Eddie Gein. It was the last sale that was made before she went missing. And Frank Warden remembered that Ed had asked about the antifreeze the day before. There were some reports that the locals saw Ed driving Warden's truck. So I don't know that 100%, 'cause there's so much information. Because I combed through newspapers. I actually read the newspaper accounts around this and everything else to try to get some accurate information. So some stuff you may have seen online on your typical sites. Some stuff may be things that you haven't heard of, but a lot of that stuff I got from the newspapers during that time.
What in the world?
Yeah. So Sheriff Schley and Deputy Warden go to Ed Gein's house, and a trail of blood lead them to a shed that's attached to the house, and there they find Bernice Warden's headless corpse hanging upside down.
Like a hog would after you...
Yeah.
Wow.
So they find her hanging upside down.
Like you would do with a hog?
Yeah. She was split open and dressed like a deer.
Oh my gosh.
And her head was found nearby in a burlap bag.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Her son.
Yeah. He was listed as finding her. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that they say that they went to Ed's house. They were like, Ed's the one, he was here last night asking about antifreeze. This is the last receipt. People are saying, yeah, Ed was driving, and they go to the house. So
I really hope he got some alone time with Ed.
He didn't. I don't think. There were a lot of different sheriffs. I think there were different counties involved. It was a big thing. There's a different sheriff named in here too, so it wasn't important for me to know exactly which county was involved in what. It doesn't really matter because it's already a done deal. So
yeah, how gruesome anything was.
Yeah. So a further search of the house produced tons of nightmarish items, and I'm going to list them out.
Before you list them, just a disclaimer to everybody who's listening. If I was you and you're very squeamish and you don't want to hear this, then jump ahead, probably 2-3 minutes?
I don't know.
But I will tell you this, if you're not, well, Jamie is about to read off is stuff that it seems fictional. It seems fictional, but it's not.
It's nasty.
Go ahead, Jamie.
It's nasty. So they found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls on his bedpost, female skulls, some with the top sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso skinned from shoulder to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from skin of human heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap bag, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove, 9 vulva in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, the vulva of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from human female nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, fingernails from female fingers, and an entire suit made of pieced-together skin of women, complete with a vest with breasts attached. Now, that may actually be the corset and leggings mentioned, but yeah. Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
That mofo nasty.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yeah.
Scum of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So the search of the home took over a week to really search the home well. It took over a week. So, of course, they arrested him.
No.
Yeah, just in case you're wondering.
He's innocent.
They arrested him. And he remained silent at first, but he did eventually confess to killing Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden.
It's only 2?
That's who he confessed to killing. There was one sheriff named Sheriff Wonsurski. I probably murdering that name. Oh, God. No pun intended, but, you know.
Wow.
I know, I was not intentional, but it fits. Whatever works.
No, there's no taking that back, Jamie.
I know. So he claimed that he recognized the face of Mary Hogan amongst the nearly dozen human heads or portions of heads. Like, he made that claim that he recognized her.
That makes me feel nauseous.
I don't know. There were some back and forth about whether he could have even recognized her. Like I said, there was more than one sheriff and type of thing, and it was like a back and forth. Like, he didn't come out and say, yeah, I don't think so, but the other guy was like, I don't know how he could have, type of thing. But anyway.
It's in his house.
No, the sheriff. Whether the sheriff could recognize Mary Hogan's face or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I was talking specifically about that.
I'm over here like, what do you
No,
mean?
Ed did it.
Yeah, like, what do you mean?
Spoiler alert, he's guilty.
Are you serious?
So Ed claimed that he dug the heads from fresh graves and that he only killed the 2 women. That was his claim, that he didn't kill anybody else, just the 2 women.
Bull spit.
Sheriff Wonsurski did not believe the story that he had taken the skulls from the cemetery. At all.
No
Didn't
way.
believe it at all. Apparently the head that resembled Mary Hogan was shrunken, like headhunters, cannibals, and his mom. I think some of them were shrunken. He was experimenting.
How do you shrink a head?
I don't know. It's not something I've researched
Yeah, you can't
or have any desire to do. Well,
I don't know if I really want to know.
Honestly, have you seen Beetlejuice?
Yes, I've seen
thank
Beetlejuice.
Jesus, you've seen one. Do you know the headhunter guy, where it's the guy sitting? You know, when he goes to the office and it's all the dead people and it's the big guy with the little tiny head. That's what I kept picturing because that saved me from picturing other more gruesome things. So that's who I kept picturing. Beetlejuice. Yes. So the heads had been well preserved with hair, ears, lips, and nose. And they felt that they had 15 separate people, but they actually ended up finding extra noses and some scalps. The numbers didn't quite add up. Some of the one sheriff did not think the numbers added up. Like with what they were being told, with what he said he did. He killed 2 women. He told them how many people he had dug up. It did not match with the body parts that they were finding. There were more.
Oh, so foul.
Yeah.
So sick. Why?
Yeah.
Why? You're already caught. Just admit it. Like, you know you're going away. Just admit how many people it was and get over it.
I know. So there was a sexton at a nearby cemetery where Gein claimed to have dug up bodies, and this sexton actually resided on the property. So he's like the caregiver of the cemetery. He oversees the cemetery.
So they're called sexton?
Sexton, yeah.
Sexton?
Yes. He said he never noticed any disturbances in the cemetery. And he said the graves were carefully mounded over and carpeted with sod after they were buried. His quote says, "All of this would have been spaded up and all the dirt around the casket removed before anybody could get to the body. The casket itself is closed with screws. Also, most caskets are enclosed in wooden boxes. Many are in concrete vaults." So one man would have to get to the body, would have to dig all that up.
6 feet down.
Yeah, dig all that up, take off the sod, remove the dirt.
Without damaging none of it.
Yeah.
Without damaging
it. Get the body out of the box or the vault, open it up. I mean, pry bar, the screws, whatever. Pry bar, no big deal.
But without making noises for the sexton to hear.
Not making any noises, and put it all back and make it appear as if nobody had touched the grave. That was the sexton's point. Like, how is this even possible?
And then on top of all of that, he has probably anywhere 8 to 12 hours to do all that.
I don't know. I'm not sure what time he started.
I mean, he can't start during the day.
No, he's not doing it during the day.
Mofo would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. They did dig up some test graves out of the ones that Ed said that he robbed, and they did find that they were missing bodies or body parts. So they did prove that he did do this to some graves.
Not fresh ones, though.
They were fresh. Like,
wow.
When he did it, he would see the obituary, and he would dig it up almost immediately. He dug up fresh graves.
What a pure psychopath.
But what the sexton at the cemetery is saying that, after they're buried, they mound the dirt up and put sod over top of it. And plus, you have all this other stuff. So he's saying even if it is fresh, you have to put it all back like you didn't take it all out in the first place. How is that even possible with one person? I don't know.
Oh, so he's indicating there might be more.
Well, he's indicating that did they all come from the cemeteries? He was questioning whether he could have even done that without being noticed, without somebody being able to walk by and say, that's something off with that grave. That's what he is saying, at least in his cemetery. They did prove that he did rob some graves. Searching the farm, there were bones that were found buried in a trench on the farm, and one skull had a gold tooth and was believed to be the skull of a man.
Of the 2 guys that gone missing with the vehicle?
I don't know. They did not identify it. Those guys, I don't think ever were found, to my knowledge. So Ed pled innocent by reason of insanity.
I hate that stupid plea.
He was diagnosed as schizophrenic and a sexual psychopath.
See, that takes away from the punishment almost. You know what I mean? Like, some of the stuff, I don't know if the death penalty was on the table back then, but if this had been someone that didn't plead insanity or something like that, they'll be probably put to death because they killed so many people and they're clearly a terrible person. But with all of that being said, it's like he clearly knew what he was doing.
I don't know. I don't know. I would think most serial killers totally know what they're doing. They have no remorse. They're psychopaths. They don't care. Ed, they diagnosed him as schizophrenic. So he did mention when I mentioned about his mom's grave, when he did that voices or visions, he had visions that were part of why he went and started doing that.
Okay.
So schizophrenic, if he's legitimately schizophrenic, I could see where he may not know that it's wrong. Like he knows it's wrong, but can't help. I don't know how to explain this because I'm not schizophrenic. So that mentally he's got issues that are causing a problem.
Yeah.
And he told the guy that Mary Hogan was in his house. The day after she's missing, the guy's talking about, he's like, she's up in the house. He told him. He came out and said, she's in my house. The guy didn't believe him.
And people with schizophrenia can hold, it's their life. You know what I mean? Like,
and he was always described as odd. So in this instance, I think he really there were issues. There were a lot of different diagnoses that were thrown around. The official one is schizophrenic with sexual psychopath.
Okay.
So he spent 10 years in an institution. He was finally deemed competent to stand trial, and the trial lasted 1 week, and he was found guilty for murdering Bernice Warden. But the court also found that at the time of her murder, he was not sane. And therefore, the court concluded he was not guilty by reason of insanity, and he was placed back into the Central State Hospital. So while he's not in prison, he is incarcerated, for lack of a better word, in the state hospital. Like, he's not getting out of the state hospital.
Okay.
He did petition to be released, claiming that he was competent and good to go. And the judge denied his petition, thank God, because I don't think he had the capacity to be sane.
I mean, I would say that's a clear-cut decision, but we'll talk a little later about that.
So eventually he got transferred to a different hospital, the Mendota Mental Institute in Madison, Wisconsin, and he was considered a model patient. He was called mild-mannered. He was very helpful, much like he was in his early life when he was as normal as he could be. You know, like when he was doing his... Everybody thought he was a nice guy, shy, and he did his job and worked hard. And so he was a model patient. He died in 1984 in the hospital from cancer and respiratory failure.
Good.
Yeah. So he's no longer with us.
Good. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be that guy. What he did, come on. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
He only confessed to killing the two women.
Because he probably only remembers them. He probably only remembers those two.
Well, it's a pot. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they suspected him of more.
At least 15 plus, right? At least 15.
No,
plus.
5.
5?
Yeah. Georgia Weckler, who was the 8-year-old girl that went missing. Evelyn Hartley, the 15-year-old girl. If you remember, there were body parts of what they considered to be from a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And there was a little girl's dress in his.
Yep.
So the two hunters, the men at the bar, whatever they were, men at the bar, hunters, both, whatever. The two guys. He was also suspected of killing his brother. There's also a story that I found that he was having dinner at a neighbor's house, and he became intrigued by one of their relatives that was there at dinner. And later that same night, a man broke into the home. That woman, the relative of the people, the woman he got intrigued by, somebody broke into her home later that same night and grabbed her young son by the neck and asked where his mother was. And the boy thought he recognized the intruder as being Ed Gein. So he never got the mother. I mean, I don't know how he left or whatever, but he never got anybody or hurt anybody. So he once told a local barber who weighed in at about 300 pounds, he poked the guy in the belly and he said, "You're just about right for roasting."
What?
Yeah. Yep. Because he did...
Slaughter. Yeah.
He did cannibalize.
Oh, yeah, he did eat people.
He did eat them, if that wasn't clear already. So I found this in a paper. It was a year after the disappearance of... This newspaper article is about a year after Bernice Worden went missing. And it's from the Oshkosh Northwestern, November 15th, 1958. And I'm going to read the excerpt from the paper. Ed Gein had his last babysitting job a year ago today. They weren't really babies anymore, though. Les Hill's two children walked down the town road from their parents' Crossroads store to visit their 51-year-old friend at his rickety old farmhouse and invited him to supper. Ed Gein came out of his woodshed and said he'd be ready as soon as he finished dressing his deer. The children laughed at another of Ed's jokes. The deer season had opened that day, all right, but they knew there couldn't be a deer in the woodshed because Ed didn't go deer hunting. And they were right. It wasn't a deer. It was the butchered body of a middle-aged businesswoman, Mrs. Bernice Worden, who had vanished that morning from her Main Street hardware store.
Yo. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the second time that, he said it was a deer, but, these kids come by. This is the second time that he didn't say, yeah, sorry, I got Mrs. Worden hanging in the woodshed, but, somebody's right there.
Yeah, and he
could have been caught.
He's blatantly just saying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This guy is an absolute monster of a person. His mom and dad did not help. Okay, his mom and dad did not help.
They helped create what he became.
Oh yeah, well they weren't like the loving, nurturing parents they should have been.
They weren't even close. The only attention he got from his dad was getting beat, and their mom verbally abused them all the time. constantly drilling into them how evil women were, how promiscuous they were, punishing them for normal, typical
Teenage stuff,
punishing them severely for it. The whole driving the religious aspect home to them. And I'm not dissing religion at all. I go to church. Not every Sunday because I'm here recording, but, I'm not dissing that at all. I'm just saying she was fanatical about it. She was using it in a very bad way. I think if you've got somebody who's already kind of wired a little strangely, if he did have schizophrenia, that is the official diagnosis, what do you think's going to happen?
Right.
When you have somebody like that.
Also, I'm not saying schizophrenia can be made, but if you hit a kid hard enough in the head enough to their ears would ring and you do it over and over and over again, you're going to have some kind of neurological damage.
Yeah, there are people who have had known head injuries where their whole personalities have changed.
Yeah, so...
or who had brain tumors. And there was actually the mass shooting in Austin a long time ago, but the guy who did it actually had a brain tumor pressing on this one portion of his brain. So some of my research, there was a paper written. It wasn't really a paper. It was just information from psychology students at a college. And they went through and looked at his whole life. And they actually did note that when asked if they thought he had a head injury, they said yes, and then cited the father's beatings in his head until his ears rang. And that happened more than once. That was anytime he came home upset for being ridiculed at school, his father would beat him in the head. Plus, his father beat them anytime he got drunk.
Yeah.
So,
which sound like often.
Yeah. So head injury wouldn't be out of the question of being a part of this too.
Yeah.
That was never in any of the newspapers or documents that I read, but that's not really out of the realm of possibility.
And also, head injuries here recently have only come to light. You know what I mean? And we're in 2021, so what? Maybe 2000s.
Look at concussion syndrome? I don't
CTE.
know. Yeah. I guarantee that boy had several concussions throughout his life.
How do I say it? There were a lot of things that led up to Ed to be the way Ed was. But at the end of the day, I'm way happier he's gone than he is alive.
Yeah, he doesn't get a pass. It's just that I can have some empathy for the fact that had he had a different upbringing, he may not have ended up being what he was.
But then I had to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Henry had the same upbringing till he died.
Mm-hmm.
And you at least don't hear nothing about him killing nobody. So at that point in time, is the decisions, like how does that work out?
I don't know how Henry didn't come across as he didn't say he was teased at school. Like it seemed like Henry didn't have the issues. Like Ed was teased because he had physical issue. He had the growth on his eye with the lazy eye, the lesion on his tongue, so he talked funny. He had strange little mannerisms. So I don't think Ed was wired quite right.
Mm-hmm.
If he had schizophrenia, there is that. So
yeah.
Henry may not have had, he didn't have any of those complications that I read. So he, as far as the nature end of things, didn't seem to have anything that indicated he had any kind of underlying genetic makeup. Do you know what I mean? Like there was nothing, he didn't seem to have the issue at school. It wasn't mentioned. That plus it seemed like I got the feeling that Augusta
honed in on
Ed more.
Yeah.
There was one thing I saw that she was, I don't know that she was hoping, but was expecting a girl child and ended up having Ed. There were some people who said he was kind of effeminate, like in his mannerisms, that he was the baby. And so she probably had, I think she had more of an attachment to him. Henry and his criticism of her when he was older, which in my opinion is what got him killed.
Yeah, 100%.
It makes me feel like he maybe stood up to things more.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He
fought back.
He maybe not fought back, but wasn't accepting it.
Mm-hmm.
He was calling BS on stuff.
Yeah.
Didn't buy into maybe what was trying to be drilled into them. Obviously not, because he met somebody.
Yeah.
And was going to move in with her. So obviously he didn't think women were the devil because He was in a relationship.
Clearly, he was popping in and out of you, so,
I guess. So, I think in this instance, I think nurture played a huge role.
Oh, yeah. I think
in Ed.
Augusta, and what was the dad's name?
George.
Made a monster. And
especially Augusta.
Yeah, I think they played a huge role. I will go as far as 90% of it's their fault. 10% is his brain wired. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's almost, to describe it, it's like, I hate to go there, but I'll be honest. It's like an abusive relationship, right? The person knows what that person's doing to him is wrong physically and mentally, but they break them down so much to where they feel as if they have to rely on them no matter what. And that sounds like Ed. That sounds like Ed.
He loved his mom. He said she was his one true love.
So he was wired to, no matter what, always obey. Doesn't matter how bad he was beaten, talked to, or treated. He was wired that way. So you take that out, he doesn't know what to do. He might try to do something normal, and that doesn't feel right to him. And so he does the only thing that he think will make him feel right again, which is probably to succumb to the voices that he said that were in his head.
And I think if his mom had been a loving, nurturing mom, and Ed lived at home as long as he did and cared for his mom when she had her stroke and then she died, I'm not saying Ed would not have had a switch flipped and he have a breakdown and act out. Like, one of the diagnoses that was thrown out that was discussed is the Oedipus complex, and that's where the boy has a infatuation with his mother.
Okay.
So just in simple terms, he already has that intense love. I mean, she's his one true love, and she dies, and he's already not right. I'm not saying that he couldn't have ended up doing crazy things anyway after his mom dies, but would it have been to that extent?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that leaves the big what if, But I will, again, say we're better without him here, which is sad to say because you don't ever hear about no one dying. But, I mean, what he did was just
disgusting,
monstrous.
Thanks for letting me research all that, Tim.
Anytime. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it. I watched the thing on Discovery Plus about him. I watched...
Did you see the paranormal one?
Yes.
I'm going to throw this in here real quick. I haven't finished watching the show. But apparently there are some paranormal happenings associated with Ed Gein. So,
and it's him apparently.
Yeah, on the property. Oh, and what I forgot to mention, I forgot to include it. His house is no longer there.
They ripped it down.
Well, somebody was going to take the house and turn it into a creepy museum. Ugh. Because after all this happened, people were there looking in the windows of the house and stuff while they were searching, and people are just odd.
People are infatuated with fear, monsters.
Yeah,
and here's your monster next door.
I mean, we're here talking about it.
Yeah, literally.
So, somebody was going to turn the house into a museum. The house caught on fire, burned down. Nobody in the community was upset about it. They were upset that it was going to be turned into a museum. It's speculation, but everybody pretty much believes that it was intentionally set. They never found out who intentionally set it. I don't think anybody really cared.
But I don't think they looked that hard.
So they did tear down the house. Somebody did buy the property at auction for, I think it was close to $4,000, and used it as a forestry. They planted trees, I believe. So the house is no longer there, but the property is said to be haunted. One of the people on the property is Augusta.
Ugh.
Warden's hardware store.
Yep.
It's no longer a hardware store. I believe it's a storage. It's being used for storage.
Storage. Yeah, that's what it's. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
That is also haunted.
Yep.
And then the jail where Ed was kept prior to going into the state hospital is also haunted by Ed.
Well, with that being said, Ed Gein is a monster.
Yes. As was his mother and father.
And his father. It sounds like Henry. May he rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, heck of an episode, Jamie.
It was crazy.
Especially at your house when things started happening to you while you're doing this.
It was when I was editing. I was not allowing myself to work on this at night, so I was only allowed to work on this during daylight hours.
And I think I got another one for you after this. We'll talk about it. See what you say.
Oh, goody.
Yay! But, Jamie, tell everybody where they can find us at.
Okay, so you can find us on all the major podcast stuff: Apple, Stitcher, Spotify.
We even on iHeartRadio.
We are on iHeart. The only one we are waiting on is Pandora.
Hey, Panda, what you waiting for, my dudes?
Apparently this is not unusual to take forever for them to approve. This is not unusual. So that's the only one currently, as of this recording, that we're waiting on. You can go to lurkpodcast.com. All of our episodes are there. There are links there to our social media: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I highly recommend that you follow us on one of those. If you're on Facebook, I would say definitely like our Facebook page. That's where most of our activity happens. I put any photos we have that go along with the podcast. That's where we post on our social media, but Facebook allows me to post more photos than the other ones. So
that's true. And don't we have merch?
We do have merch. You can find that. Website is pinned to the top of our Facebook page, and it is in the show notes for you to check out. We've tried to price them pretty reasonably, and we have shirts and sweatshirts and kids' shirts and onesies and a face mask and
to also,
I think a throat pillow.
There is a throat
There's a throat pillow.
But I'll also say this, too, to everyone out there. The sizes are true, okay? And what I mean by that is like, I wear an extra large, fits perfect. If I get an extra large in Nike, it's very tight. So this is true sizes. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, they are do seem to be running true to size. So
yeah, they fit humans, not toddlers.
Yeah, and there's a couple different options. There's some women's shirts in there. You know, we're all new to this, so we're playing around with it. But
I'm gonna buy me a women's shirt and just put it on for you.
Okay. I'm going to take a picture of it then.
Okay.
You do that and I'm taking a picture.
And then you got to call me Thumbelina. I got to pee real bad. But, hey, Jamie, great job today. Great creepy episode. Great job.
Keep lurking.